In 1981, America went through a big crisis. The streets were full of homeless people. Lots of them were starved to death. On TV, President Ronald Reagan reported clearly about the crisis.
You won't like it. I didn't like it.
Sitting in front of TV as a black man, he is very sad. He lost his job long ago. To make ends meet is a big issue. His name is Chris Gardner, a brave man who never gives up and become a millionaire. In 2006, his story inspired the production of a movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. That is the best movie in that year. I once went through hard days. Today I'll review it. Chris, the main character, is a silly father. He bet all his money on medical equipment. He thought it could bring money easily, but he went bankrupt. No one bought his equipment. He left all in his house. At that time, his wife was forced to work double time. Life pressure was enormous. She was either angry or rude to his husband. Chris hadn't paid for rental for 2 months. He was in debt. His car was also taken by the police because he didn't pay for fine. His life was like hell. He hadn't smiled for a long time. Until one day, he came to a place where everyone was smiling. He stopped a man and asked why. He said he was the manager of the stock exchange. The 27-year-old Chris then had a dream. He wanted this kind of happiness. Chris then applied for the job, but his background was not good enough to be accepted. Chris didn't give up. He waited outside the company every day for the manager. Finally he could meet him, gave him his portfolio, but he was rejected one more time. He continued to wait downstairs for the whole month. He met the manager again. To have a talk, Chris lied that he was also going to the same place and they got on a taxi. Chris kept talking about himself. The manager ignored him and kept playing a Rubik cube. That's a luxurious pleasure at that time. The manager said the cube couldn't be solved. Chris bet on it. I could solve it before we arrive. The manager didn't believe Chris, but he was quickly surprised, because Chris had solved the first side, then the second side, and finally the whole cube. Even the driver turned around to watch. The car pulled up, and Chris already solved it. The manager was stunned. He saw such a young man for the first time. You're amazing. See you later. But Chris was a dead man. The manager didn't pay for fees. Chris couldn't afford $17. He just had to run away. Meanwhile kept apologizing. Overload. He rushed into a subway, but the driver kept chasing after. The subway arrived. Chris quickly got on. He was a little bit late, and lost all his money. Chris was depressed. He cried, sweated, or he didn't cry, not sure. His wife then said she wanted to leave him. She was a weak woman, so Chris take charge of raising the child. When he took the kid to home, they were sent away by the house owner. He begged the landlord to give him 1 more week, and promised to help him repaint the house. The landlord agreed. The best thing at that time was that the manager called and asked him to come for the interview. That's a saving moment of his life. While he was painting, someone knocked the door. The police came. Because he didn't pay for fine, he was arrested. At the police station, he tried to beg, but he was kept in the station for 1 day. Chris had to ask his wife to take care of the kid for 1 day. But what's more difficult is, what about the interview? He was released the next day. It's time. Chris had no time to dress up. He rushed to the company. The interview was to search for talents. This candidate not only dressed informally, but he was covered with sweat and oil. The manager saw him and felt irritated. That made him ashamed. Chris shook hands with everyone, but the boss was not happy. Chris sat down and started the conversation. I want to give a good impression, but sorry. I was arrested by the police yesterday because I couldn't pay for fine. The interviewers all laughed, but the boss seemed not happy. He challenged Chris. Can you do it? Do you understand it? Do you deserve this job? Chris replied with only 3 words.
I'm the type of person, if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm gonna tell you that I don't know. I know how to find the answer, and I will find the answer.
At last, the boss asked, if someone come for the interview without a shirt, but I still accept him, what would you think? This question is controversial. No answer is correct. But Chris gave out a perfect answer. It's even funny.
He must have had on some really nice pants.
Chris was accepted, but obstacles were waiting for him. That was internship. He got no salary. How could he raise his family? Chris hesitated for long. He didn't want to give up this chance. He decided to survive by water, and risked his life for 6 months. The landlord sent them away. They lived in a hostel for visitors. Chris started the internship. The company rules were very strict. They only choose 1 out of 20 based on achievements and results. What could Chris do? He put 3 times effort more than others. He was always the first to come to the company. He didn't drink water while working because he had no time to go pee. He finished work before 3 p.m. to pick up his son. They went home by bus in 2 hours. Because he was black, a manager kept ordering him to buy coffee or food. Lots of customers scolded him when he phoned them. He tried to be calm and then smiled with them. One day, he called a customer. They wanted to be at their company in 20 minutes. Chris rushed to there, but on the way, a superior asked him to park a car. Chris had to agree. He rushed after that, but he was late. He's just gone. He was also fined for wrong parking place. Chris had to pay for it, but he didn't give up. At the weekend, he took his son to the customer's house, and sincerely apologized to the customer. He asked them to go for a match. Chris agreed, although at last he couldn't persuade the customer. By this occasion, he met lots of rich people, and enlarged customers set. His life seemed better. Unexpectedly, disasters came. This letter was sent by the bank. They took all of his balance in account. Chris went bankrupt. He didn't resign himself. His last medical equipment was out of order and couldn't be sold, because he hadn't paid for rental for long. The landlord threw his things away, and didn't let him stay in. He and his son were homeless. They couldn't find anywhere to stay. That night they slept at the train station. He was depressed. He went around. The son asked where they were going. Chris could just answer that he had no idea. They sat on the bench. Seeing the son in sufferings, Chris was touched. He played a game. They supposed the medical equipment as a time travel machine. They traveled to ancient time. Chris acted as it was real. He invented the story and made his son excited. This beautiful kind of imagination was mixed with happiness and sufferings. Chris took the kid to a public toilet. They would sleep there that night. They had to use toilet paper as a nest. Someone knocked the door. Chris held his son's ears, and used his legs to hold the door. This brave man at last burst into tears. He tried to be calm. Life was too hard. That was the first time Chris felt as miserable as that. That was the best scene of the movie. The next day, he went to work. After work, he went to find an organization which adopt children, but they didn't accept his son. They only accept the orphaned. Chris then had to come to the house for homeless people. Crisis was serious. The queue's length was to the end of the street. The manager reported that there were only 4 places left. One homeless man suddenly broke the queue. Chris tried to persuade him, but that man fought. The manager asked them to get away. Chris was annoying. I came here very early to queue. Luckily the guys around told that the homeless man broke the queue, so Chris and his son were allowed to go in. At night he lured the kid, and then stayed up to repair lights. He took a quick rest and then read books. During the day, he worked hard. After work, he took the son to struggle for a place to sleep. Sometimes they couldn't make it. Then they had to sleep at a public toilet. Sometimes they succeeded, and had meal with hundreds of homeless people. Chris never stopped studying. Finally the contest came. That day, Chris completed the test very soon. He was the second one to hand in. The man next to him in the elevator asked him, "Why are you so hurrying?" Chris said he had to pick up his son. That guy was a turkey cock. The test was so easy. He studied so well. Chris said the theory test was too difficult. That guy asked, "Theory test?" Then rushed back to the room. Haha, such a good student. On the way, the boss asked Chris for $5. Chris hesitated. Borrow $5? That amount may be nothing for someone, but for him, it's a big deal. Then he still lent the boss. Not long after, he had to sell his blood to afford a lamp. He continued to fix lights. That night finally Chris could repair the light. He turned it on. Bright light covered the dark room. Then Chris sold the light. In the end, he solved difficulties. The son didn't scream, he just smiled. Such a boy. That night, they were allowed to stay in a hostel, but the bed was empty. It turned out they watched movie and fell asleep. At last, the internship came to an end. Would Chris be chosen among 20 candidates? He was very calm. No matter the result was, he tried his best. That day, the manager called for Chris, "Come here." Chris could guess what his manager would tell him. Chris was tense. He took off glasses and wore on a coat. He got into the room in hesitation. Chris shook hands with the manager, sat down and joked.
I thought I'd wear a shirt today, being the last day and all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. But, wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first day.
Chris used to talk much with customers, but at that moment, he was speechless. He opened up his eyes. He kept nodding his head. He tried not to burst into tears, but he couldn't. He had to go. The manager paid him back $5. Chris got out of the office. He couldn't hold anything tight, because happiness finally came to him. In the crowd, Chris held his hands. He cried, but he was much happier than anyone near him. Ending, father and kids walked down the street. A black guy passed by. He was the one in the movie's story, millionaire Chris Gardner. He is now a millionaire. If you're stuck in life difficulties, I hope this movie could inspire you. The movie wants to tell us a message. God never takes everything from someone, just keep trying and you will be paid off. But that's not easy. If you haven't achieved what you want, let's give a try together.